You light our homes. Keep us warm.
You help us explore, innovate, and achieve the unthinkable.
You are everywhere.
Yet, sometimes out of reach.
You move us forward and bring us together.
And together, we're on a journey towards the future of energy.
So what will it look like?
It's hard to say, but we know it will be sustainable and abundant.
We're already on our way.
With a common purpose, each of us playing our part.
At Deloitte, we're connecting every bright mind, every organization, every startup, every innovator.
Every citizen, CEO, and regulator.
Making this future happen won't be easy, so we're developing practical solutions.
And a clear roadmap to help our clients on their way.
We'll keep making those connections
Each step well planned, moving forward together.
to make our new energy future a reality. Let's connect for a new energy future.
I will stay standing for a while. Today we will talk about hydrogen as a remedy for gas and fuel markets disruptions. Of course, this title has been formulated following late February this year and what happened and has been happening in Ukraine ever since. And I would like to remind you about three things. One is the 8th of July 2020, the announcement of the European Hydrogen Strategy. Back then, Europe was very clear. We want to abandon fossil fuels. So it's been July 2020. Those who've made the most of this time stand a chance today to meet their goals related to the new challenges that EU puts in front of us. Another fact, you might remember social unrests and what the steam era gave us. Mobility, people commuting from rural areas to big cities to work in big plants. You remember the entrepreneur of the middle class. To my mind, this is my theory, but I believe that hydrogen will mean a similar revolution, which means that all the business models that are around will cease to do so. We need to build them anew. And a bit of madness is something that we need in order to make it happen. Those who understand it and follow it will turn into natural leaders. And the third most important element here, Poland is famous for working in a non-systemic way that's most functional here. So makeshift solutions are most durable. In order to be able to find your ways through the new hydrogen strategy and the new reality, we need to abandon our old ways and start building something that's stable and predictable. After this short introduction, I would like to invite Professor Myślecki to try to connect with what you did at the beginning of the 90s when you built the Polish power system with the perspective of today. So looking from what was needed back then, can we now turn and see how to handle the challenges of today, those related to hydrogen? Good afternoon or good evening, as some would prefer to say. I'm very happy that there are still so many of us still bearing with us and participating in this meeting. Just a small remark. I did not build the Polish grid. It was there. I was just part of a group of people that for the first time applied a complex, comprehensive IT platform on the existing system, creating a foundation, a technological and system foundation for the so-called balancing market. But in order to decide about the price at this market, we had to include all important operations of the entire national power-related system to it, so long-term contracts, long-term transactions, mid-term transactions, short-term transactions. This system has witnessed and decided on the central distribution decision-making platform that was the first comprehensive approach to creating a systemic model and then creating something that has been operating until now. Nobody has managed actually till now to come up with anything better. The system that seemingly was meant for the balancing market, but actually that was a comprehensive system with overhaul plan and so on. So all these elements of maintaining the system were also there. What is interesting, the Polish PSE, Polish Electric Energy Grid, have called a tender that was won by an American company that had some traditions that actually built, apologies, some throat-related problems. So in the US, this company built a more technological advanced system for supervising and control. I think it was in California. And they couldn't handle the Polish system, and the contract had to be dissolved, and the good old system from the 90s Of course, it has been upgraded on the way, technology-wise, but the idea for the system has been preserved without major changes. And back then, there was a far higher level of trust, social trust, in any debate, and this is a serious debate concerning hydrogen-related issue and the general power transformation and energy transformation. And social trust is something that is indispensable. You cannot handle everything by means of legal contracts, and those interpersonal relationships are really important. I entered the power sector as the co-designer of the Solvavira system that actually was designed by Vinul, a private company that does not exist anymore. So we won the tender, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Science, they knew me, there was Prime Minister Buzek and Professor Wiśniewski. They approached me and appointed me to head a team that would be implementing the solution. I used to be the president, then I chaired the supervisory board of PSE, and then within the time horizon of 10 months, we managed to build the system that was not really designed till the end. We kept on working on it. Actually, a book was published later on describing this experience. Anyway, we were entrusted with this task. So a person that was in a private company that won a tender procedure then took over as the leader of the company that actually announced the tender. So 10 months, and we had the same money at the beginning, same money at the end, so we didn't have any annexes. So a huge achievement of Polish IT, Polish power engineering. And I need to tell you that when I look at it with a hindsight, I regret that those times are gone, because we really wanted to create this system. We didn't look at the money. We didn't look at the time. At a certain point at PSE, we built a dormitory like the one you would find in the army, because the designers would sleep on the spot so as to save time and be able to devote as much time as possible to the actual construction of the system. So we're talking about huge transformation, new technologies. We talk about a revolution in power engineering. This cannot be done without the people who wish to join in. That's one thing. Another one is, it is with great attention that I've been observing, and I'm really very happy to participate in this conference. Although I do not specialize in hydrogen, but I can say that I've learned a lot during this event. There are many experts here in the floor among the speakers and audience members who have mastered an important part of the technology or technologies related to hydrogen. But little has been said about the significance of hydrogen in energy transformation. It is not hydrogen that is the core issue here, but the transformation that is inescapable and necessary, and also accelerated with those dramatic conditions that we found ourselves in. So just an introduction to our discussion, I will sum it up by Peter Drucker's studies. Peter Drucker is to be considered a person that has the best possible understanding of the times to come. He died relatively recently, 92, at the age of 92. But right before the onset of the 21st century, he wrote a book that anybody should read, whether you know or don't know anything about power, New Reality. This book has been translated and written in a clear language, and there was a clear conclusion there. He said that huge breakthrough technologies are not about somebody making them up. It is just a sudden coincidence in bringing together some smaller technologies, inventions of this and that kind, and all of a sudden a time comes for this group of inventions to accumulate, and the time is favorable for this collective invention to be used properly. And such a great invention that opened up major revolutions in Poland was, well, first we had commercial revolution. So continents were discovered, but there were no means to transport goods between Southern America that was just discovered in Europe. There were conflicts because Europe specializes in it, so it destroyed itself. So we had the Northern War that actually destroyed Europe. We had 30-year wars. We had the peace treaty 1648, and huge shipyards that built huge military vessels all of a sudden did not know what to do about them. So they transferred them, they got rid of the cannons and anything that was needed for the army, and they turned it into a freight ship. So first, a huge freight ship that could transport a lot, of course, for those days. But on top of this, what accumulated were all kinds of experiences and solutions concerning the design of the sail, navigating equipment, and so on and so forth. But back then already you had the reason to get into commercial exchange with, and that's how trade started. Then we had steam engine, then we've got electricity, telecom, and then now we are facing the fourth revolution, digital revolution. So we are moving on to using information. And now power transformation will not happen by means of applying RES or hydrogen. It all has to be brought together, mapped together. And today's conference showed us the components that will be necessary to accompany the hydrogen component. But the focus is, once again, on transformation. Another thing is political in nature. If somebody thinks that the EU resigns from Green Deal, even if Russia decides to use the atomic bomb, Europe will not withdraw. To any crisis, Europe answers with strengthening the Green Deal policy. Fit to 55, the document was adopted. That was a response to COVID. But the response to the Russian aggression in Ukraine is repower that has been mentioned here. Of course, you did mention the documents. We heard them from the representative of the European Union, among others, but you haven't drawn a conclusion that I would like to make clear now. This is the expression of the determination of Western elites. It is a clear sign that we will not withdraw because we have no place to withdraw to. People criticize the Union, Germany, we are looking where to open another front. No, if we wish to be in the EU, I want to be there. I will stay there alone, even if everybody else decides to leave the EU, leave Poland. I've lived in the East for long enough, okay? I've done my time there, and I will stick to the Union, even if I see some cracks in it. So we, people sitting here in this very room, we are responsible for conducting this transformation. It is only by joining this arrangement of transformation that can ensure us a normal place in the EU. It is not a technological program. It is an identity-related program for the European Union. Thank you. I'm never, you always get this bon mot, this nice phrase that the professor utters, so it's always hard to take up afterwards. Anyhow, whenever I go abroad, people tell me you live in a very happy country, very lucky country, a third hydrogen state, so this revolution related to hydrogen will have to occur relatively quick because you are really in need of hydrogen. Well, actually, the Polish companies, few of those big fish believe that hydrogen will be unavoidable, but I will quickly jump to one of our guests, and we will ask you now, representing the European Union. You make numerous calculations, you prepare them in the documents that Hydrogen Europe uses within the European Union so as to set certain patterns. So how big is the determination that Professor Myślecki has just mentioned? Well, it is hard not to agree with what we've heard. Well, actually, those crises, well, we've been through some hard times and one crisis followed another, but it is true that after each and every crisis, in response to its consequences, we've witnessed acceleration. So not coming to a halt, but quite opposite, increasing our ambitions, expanding the scope, adding financing to it. So in this respect, you can agree with Professor Myślecki 100%. Okay, there are some discussions going on. We talk about the AFIR directive, about this regulation. How many fuel stations, what distances, are there the big ones or smaller ones? How much of the hydrogen available should be compressed? How much liquid? There is an ongoing discussion about how restrictive regulations are to be in order for all the RES producing power for the generation of green hydrogen being additional ones. To what an extent will we have to correlate time-wise the production of hydrogen and RES? So the discussions are ongoing, and we know that no clear answers have been established, but we know that these changes will happen. These are only details we are talking about, but as a rule, then certainly this revolution will happen, and the targets, the goals, so say the industry by 2030 will have to ensure 50% of hydrogen it uses to be replaced with green hydrogen from renewables. Maybe it will be 40 or maybe 70. The debate is on, but this target will surely stay there, and the perspective of 2030 is something, given the amount of hydrogen that will have to be generated and consumed. These are the amounts. If you add some targets for transportation, for marine, for aviation, and so on, we get to 20 million tons. It's over 3 times as much as the entire European industry uses today of hydrogen to produce ammonia, refinery purpose, and so on. So it is 3 times as much by 2030 only, based on renewable hydrogen only. So that shows, okay, maybe it will change, maybe it will not be 20, maybe it will be somewhat less or more. But there are no doubts as to the fact that the targets will be sustained, that they will be very ambitious, and that we need to be acting now already, even if it's 18 or 15 million tons. These are still the amounts. Again, we are talking about 2030. It's tomorrow, given the time that you need to build new RES capacities. 20 million tons is at least 130 gigawatts of electrolysis. To it, you will need 150 gigawatts of RES. And I'm not only talking about the 10 million euro, because you need again, the same amount beyond Europe. So when you think about the time horizon until 2030, this cannot be done if we only sit and wait idly for everything to be clear. If we do, then in 2030, we will not be able to proudly say that we are hydrogen third European producer, because we will be the 13th Europe's hydrogen producer, and we'll be lagging behind the market. And we will simply lose the chance that offers itself today. The hydrogen that we produce in Poland is not green, it's not blue, it's grey, and it has to be replaced. But we have the potential in industry, we have the storage potential, we have the transfer potential, we know how to use it safely. These are the things that we should leverage to our own benefit, rather than keep on sitting, waiting until everything is clear. All the dots and decimal points have been put in the documents.
Thank you very much. A man who breaks barriers, both in acting and thinking, is Tomoho. I'm not sure if you follow what Tomoho does, but every few minutes he starts up a new project, and he says the world is going to look completely different. Tell us why you act this way, why this makes sense. You're welcome. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here. Answering the question, I'm not sure what to add, because I practically agree with every word that has been said so far. So let me just perhaps start with, I don't know what logic I go by. First, there is this issue of all these installations. This whole transformation needs to be financed, because it applies to everything. the entire industry, all the self-governments, all the entities on the market. And there is no enough money, there is not enough subsidies either in the EU nor in the European community to finance all of that. First of all, let's start that the biggest sin is the syndrome of waiting for subsidies. We're waiting for subsidies. Once we get the subsidies, we'll do something. And they're waiting, those that are waiting. And they are going to be waiting because there needs to be enough for everyone. It's just that simple. So that's the first point. The second point, if we are not waiting for subsidies, then we need to build a business model which defends itself, which is a model in which somebody can invest in and for which the bank can give a credit in a way which makes that level of risk acceptable. For this to be that way, the project needs to be either secured in the sort of corporate finance schematic with some huge company behind, but most frequently, and that's the case, renewables, it's in project finance scheme. So the securing of the financing is the project itself. Now, the project to secure financing, it needs a certain perspective in time. There must be a guarantee out there that for some years, somebody will spend a certain amount of money on the product that comes from installation, which will finance this installation. And now, this is called an off-taking agreement. There must be someone who will come and say, okay, I'm buying this hydrogen for 15 years. And the bank says, okay, that party that is buying is credible, we believe him, so we'll give you credit. The problem is, we are existing in a situation that the offtake of something that is green is not entirely precise. We are talking about what will certification be based on, how it's going to change, how it's going to evolve. What off-taker is going to risk a 15-year contract if after 7 years that hydrogen from green can become non-green? No bank is going to risk it, no off-taker. So the only way to receive such off-take contract is to anticipate what this certification is to look like eventually. And as we know, it's supposed to be net zero. So no risks connected with climatic burden. So if we take a look at it this way, then it becomes obvious that each and every project connected to the grid, electropower grid, and using the energy from the electropower suffers the risk of changing the status of the energy. The status of the energy coming from the grid can change, such as biomass. 3 years ago, biomass was great. Now it's not. So this evolution of regulations will be very dynamic. And we simply know that we don't know. We don't know at what point in time and how, but we know what the goal is. So we must anticipate that goal and adapt to it. And this is the only condition, I guarantee this. Only under this condition, the off-taker will believe that he can safely sign the off-take contract, and the bank will believe it can finance it. So we're talking about off-grid projects. And that's what I'm sticking to. I'm not getting involved in any other projects. I try to avoid other projects because they are just too risky. If we're talking about off-grid projects, and this is, I'm wrapping up the sequence of conclusion, there is one important aspect. The size of production will be determined by the renewables which will be able to be installed. And because it's an off-grid system, then renewables must be integrated territorially with the installation that produces it in some sensible manner. So if somebody wants to install 1 gigawatt of electrolysis, then if they have at their disposal 10 terawatt hours from OZE in that place, then they can take that risk if they install 1 gigawatt. but he or she will be using the grid, then there is a risk that no offtake will be done. And this is, of course, connected with tremendous risks. So if we take a look at it from this perspective, everything becomes clearer. It also becomes clear under what conditions these installations can actually start. And I'm not talking about hydrogen only. I'm talking about the full value chain, which starts with renewables, through energy storage, through electrolysis, through hydrogen derivatives such as ammonium, methanol, and others, through storing, logistics, compression, all the other issues involved. All of this has to be connected into one single whole with one common principle. We have to imagine what this transformation is for and adapt to its goals, and not in a reactive way think when the commission, what, how will it modify once again RED 2 and then RED 3 and it will be in it. Because the offtake contract is for 15 years. So this is the key issue, which for me works. It orders my thinking, and we're only concentrating on such projects. That's why we have so many of them, because we are trying to start as many of them as possible, because there is one more very important aspect, and the consequence of the fact that it's off-grid project. Off-grid project means that there are no operational costs practically. We're not buying energy. We're not buying gas. We're not buying anything. Everything is our own in our own consumption. However, of course, the profitability of the project is determined by capex, by the investment capital. It's depreciation, amortization, whatever we call it. So the entire art in such project is to have capex at the lowest possible level, and it can be lowered by subsidies, for example, even though they are not accounted in amortization, or they can be lowered by doing many projects at the same time, by the economy of scale, because then you can get from the producer of technology very, very important discounts, very significant discounts. And in my view, this is the proper approach, because we don't have the time today. We had time 5 years ago to make small single projects, to try things out, whether it's working, to check how we feel about it. There's no time for that anymore. You need to go full steam ahead, and there is no problem with money for it. I can guarantee that it's not that we are looking for money, but money is looking for us, and quite dynamically. I'm talking about infrastructure funds, about various banks, or global banks, European banks, financial institutions. If the model defends itself, there are no problems in financing it. The same way it is with renewables today. So this is the direction, and there is nothing to wait for. Everybody must start doing it. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I said that he breaks barriers, but I have a question to Paweł Piotrowicz. TÜV SÜD, to which you represent, is in fact involved in most of the projects which were executed in Poland, and we have some problems here that projects in Poland are not that successful, but they're successful outside of Poland. I'm not asking you for exact diagnosis, but well, perhaps you could tell us, because at one point when we know when natural gas is going to be replaced by hydrogen, looking at the experiences I've mentioned, can you tell us how we can define this recipe? Thank you, Tomasz. A bit of clarification first. I was presented as deputy chairman. I'm not. I'm the head of gas department, which deals with all issues connected with energy, renewables, hydrogen. I'm a chairman, but in Hydrogen Poland, a different company, but thanks for promoting me. But going back to the question, We're observing hydrogen economy. We've been observing it for a long time. You see it. This is where we have our clients, and we are looking at how it evolves. And this evolution is quite slow in comparison with other countries, and there is no going back, of course, and I agree. It's a necessity. Energy transformation necessity, and fuel transformation is necessity. We have no choice because soon everything will just stop. The alternative is renewables, all kinds of technologies that help renewables, such as hydrogen technologies, and also nuclear technologies or small SMRs. And it's not going to be a simple replacement of these technologies and fuels, which we're using today with hydrogen technologies. At this point, I'd like my colleagues to correct me if I'm wrong. In 2020, Europe had the demand for 12 terajoules of natural gas. I'm expressing it in energy units because in hydrogen, that's about 280 million tons of hydrogen. How? Oh, we talked about tens of millions of tons. 280 million tons. How are we going to get it? How much? How are we going to get so much renewable hydrogen? We just can't. So we have to think of it somewhat differently. That's why it's going to be an evolution, transformation. It has to be quick and decisive, but it's going to be an evolution. There isn't going to be a quick revolutionary change. Now, going back to the question, what's it like with Polish companies? Well, I've started with the fact that we see certain evolution. True, at the beginning, Polish companies have provided various expertises, analysis, and as Tomoho mentioned, there was time to try things out, and these were such attempts. I have a certain feeling that some of these attempts were just, excuses that they want to do something, but these projects, in fact, never really spread wings. But today we see a certain change, perhaps a bit late, but nevertheless a certain ray of hope and a chance for Polish companies. More and more Polish companies apply to TÜV SÜD to take them through the certification and homologation process of ready solutions, which is very encouraging. However, these are solutions, there are still few of them in comparison with abroad. And here the topic of financing, the way it looks is that nothing happens without external financing in Poland. Everybody's waiting for projects. Now EU has made available an entire package of financing programs. Great, but bear in mind that that takes time. Companies which are our competitors, foreign companies, are not waiting. They are waiting. They've been working for a long time on their solutions, both technological and process solutions. And I'm afraid that if we don't speed up, then once again we'll be clients, we'll be customers, we'll be buying from the outside. And Poland does have potential. We have great specialists that we could make use of. And whom we do use, but not as much as we could. So somewhat pessimistically, but I spoke about this ray of hope, that first such technologies appear, which we are beginning to certify. So we'll have Polish solutions. Thank you, Paweł. Sorry for promoting you unwillingly. Hopefully these are prophetic words. Nevertheless, you confirm one thing, that in KPO, we have in the National Recovery Plan, we have money that's in there. And when it comes to other funds, we have to compete with those who are ready, who have been ready for years to compete for those funds. So at the point when we can't carry out big scale, scalable, multi-thread tasks or pleasures, we have no chances to apply for them. Well, I can just add that we do have a hydrogen strategy, which was mentioned a number of times today. But please bear in mind, the hydrogen strategy is just it's just guidance, just points the way. It says we want to be hydrogen-based, right? But it's up to business, it's up to industry, how quickly we're going to become, in fact, hydrogen-based. I see here a certain inescapability of a certain process, that is cooperation of business and industry with science. The Łukasiewicz network, 20-some hydrogen projects, this is something that should be commercialized. I understand some will laugh, it's cooperation between academia, but perhaps industry, business should give proposals of technological solutions to these academic networks, institutes, universities, etc., to speed up their works. Not every company has such great professionals and lab solutions to test out their proposals at their own locations. I'm very happy we do have Polish hydrogen strategy, but in it we have 2 gigabytes of electrolyzers, and in European at the same time we are talking about 2 times 40 in Europe, 40 outside of Europe. This means that, just counting this potential, we will have 2.5%. So we're going to be number 15, number 16. Yes, just as Grzegorz has said. So we have to look at how we ourselves scale our goals in hydrogen. So we don't really reflect on what we already have and what we have to secure in terms of green hydrogen. Krzysztof, in order for all of it to work, we need new business models. We are talking about 6 hydrogen valleys. We are talking about big ideas. But the question is, are we able to understand how this business should look like if in certain places we're still, standing in place? Thank you for that question, since it fits my way of thinking regarding what sort of approach I see when it comes to development of hydrogen. What I see also in this room and among some of the listeners and presenters. Very often we hear in Poland, we are the biggest producer of hydrogen in Europe, the 5th in the world. We have competences, we have everything. And of course, okay, we have a lot of experiences when it comes to work with hydrogen, but there is a lot of buts here. We are producing hydrogen from neutral gas and not from water hydrolysis. And we are using it right after production. I'm omitting the buffer tank area. We're not storing it to use it in different places. In addition, we use it in very controlled conditions of chemical, petrochemical, fertilizer plants, whatever you call them, where everything is done under the eye of specialists with a lot of experience, under a fence with barbed wire, hopefully with no minefield. But we are going to sell this hydrogen at the station, a supermarket near Tesco, where every average Mr. Kowalski will have to be able to deal with it. It's the same substance, yes, but the challenges connected with introducing it on the market in this way are completely different than the ones you have experience with. Some of them can be transferred from current hydrogen models to the model of using hydrogen in the future as fuel or semi-product for production of other so-called green fuels, that is methanol, ammonium. But I have an impression that we're kind of lying to ourselves and we're standing still. What you said in the beginning, we have to turn upside down business models, and only then we will be able to approach, coming from carte blanche, we'll be able to approach this topic of green hydrogen in modern economy after energy transformation. Only then we'll be able to do it. One of the problems, which I think Tomoho mentioned, is a question of generating energy from renewables for electrolyzers. Well, in Poland, we have 2 big challenges when it comes to that, which come to the model that Tomoho spoke about. We need installation that will integrate renewables with electrolyzer.
There are 2 issues here. Theoretically, you can build dedicated energy lines between the manufacturer and recipient, but I don't think anybody got such a license in the country, but for a single country that holds monopoly. We cannot allow for erecting a wind farm in the northern part of Poland where the conditions are good and build a dedicated line to a refinery in Gdańsk that has somewhat worse wind conditions in order to be able to transport this energy there and produce hydrogen on the spot and use it there. We cannot do that. What is more, I've been a dreamer speaking about wind turbines because we cannot build them. 1.5% of the area of the country with the laws we have today meets the standards for actually building wind generation there. And the best model in terms of generation for electrolyzers is connecting photovoltaics with wind. It is only then that we get most optimum solutions. Another thing that is somewhat taboo, particularly in Brussels. I hope that nobody will take offense, but RES is not a good source of energy for electrolyzers. We need a source that will work 8,000 hours per annum so that it's clean. I would connect electrolyzer to nuclear. Then we would have pure energy. Of course, there'll be voices to the effect that there is a problem of waste from the reactor. I agree. This raises a range of different challenges. But if, owing to political reasons, we stubbornly press towards using hydrogen as energy storage, and we rely on RES solely, and we talk about transporting electricity from wind energy to the place where this energy is needed and can be consumed. If we rely on RES only because such decisions were made in this proverbial Brussels, that I'm also a fan of, and Professor will have to sit there with me because I'm not going to get kicked out of the European Union quickly. Anyhow, if we approach it from the RES perspective only, we are doomed to fail. We might use, for example, communal municipal waste. Not an optimum solution, but there is this part of waste that cannot be recycled, but can somehow be processed in biogas plants to biogas that nobody will inject to the distribution system as it will not hold the parameters. But we can get hydrogen from there. So this revolution, this approach to the power revolution that will make it possible for us to use using the low emission or zero emission carrier that is hydrogen, it takes a multifaceted approach. We shouldn't be limited by RES wind PV only, but use any source, making the most of this potential given how much it is economically and environmentally justified. Only then can we lead to a situation in which this revolution can bring tangible results. I hope that this answers your questions. Absolutely. So we are back to what I promote, so hydrogen in every household. But we need to raise qualifications of all those that are going to be the users of hydrogen-fueled devices. Grzegorz, from the point of view of this Brussels, how do you see that? Will we manage to resolve the issues of the gas and fuel markets with the help of hydrogen? In Poland, I'm not sure yet. In Europe, generally, well, let me give you a few words before I answer this question more directly. Before I touch upon green hydrogen, the fact is that the Repower EU targets are related to renewable energy mostly. Now we are working on renewable energy directive. It is hard to expect that renewable energy related document focuses on anything else but renewable energy, but that does not close the door for the development of hydrogen in relation with nuclear. There are some criteria for certain business activities to be considered and perceived sustainable. As for the production of hydrogen, the criterion is 3 tons of CO2 per ton of hydrogen. And that's it. Nobody says that it's supposed to be green or not green. There is this CO2 emission threshold, and that's it. And that's the only criterion that is open enough for the hydrogen to be produced from nuclear energy, from waste, that can meet the criteria or can even generate hydrogen of a negative footprint, or even hydrogen from pyrolysis from natural gas or thermal reforming, can meet the criteria. So this is not a no-no, but there is a certain emphasis on what technologies are supported by the European Union and which are simply possible. We also heard it from the representative of the European Commission. The other technologies will certainly not be banned, and that has to be made clear. It's always about the costs. When we talk about nuclear, it has advantages in terms of the cost of its stability, but the costs, well, but we can not really compete with nuclear energy when you think about the potential of PV in Africa, for example. Maybe the situation will change, but the nuclear technology that we have today, cost-wise, they're simply not competitive with the newest RES technologies, and that's a natural process. But waste, yes, particularly in a decentralized, dispersed way. These are technologies that can be used directly at incineration plants in the cities. They can be used there without the necessity of storing, transporting hydrogen to a distant place. You can use it locally to boost power transformation of public transport, garbage trucks, and so on. So they can be used locally, why not? But as for decarbonization of big industry, we need solid, constant supply, so nuclear fits in well. As for the long-term targets, I encourage, as has been done before, to look at the market in an innovative way. Because if we look at it only from the perspective of, okay, we are producing steel in Silesia today because we have sources of coal there, so that's the best location. Let's keep focusing on that because we don't know what the future holds. So if we do that this way, we may lose our share in the market. In Hydrogen Europe, we have companies that very clearly work towards making investment decisions or have made the decisions about building greenfield steelworks in Spain. Because now nobody cares really where you will find cheap coal. This is not the main factor that is determining where it pays off to make steel. They have RES to a large extent. Why not build them in Spain in the end? So we should abandon our ways of looking at the business the way we've done so far. It might so happen that we wake up to a reality in which the production of fertilizers and steel will be located in places that are completely different than today. If we do not predict it, it might turn out that our companies will be doomed to fail. Of course, Brussels will be blamed as usual, but well, one needs to answer this question of whether you cannot really predict these occurrences. The decisions are made today. Salzgitter, for example, yesterday, I think, a decision was announced by the German government will get €1 billion for decarbonizing the steelworks based on green hydrogen. So these are not the things that should come as a surprise. They are happening, and certainly they are happening to a scale that will make it possible to resign from fossil fuels. And again, the scale is a challenge here, particularly in Polish conditions, where there is still a lot to be done in our power system in terms of its decarbonization and how much RES we will need for this system. Certain legal regulations have to come in place. So these are all the factors that need to be considered that will have to be addressed. But again, it is unavoidable. You cannot escape the changes. They will occur, and they are to occur soon. We need to have certain boldness in facing the challenges. If there is an obligation that 1% of, let's say, fuels in aviation in 2030 is to be based on hydrogen fuels, this will accelerate the production capacities for these fuels. If a large-scale business, the industry sectors wish to continue that at a certain point, it will not matter anymore whether green hydrogen to this 1% of the market costs €1 per kilogram, 2 or 3 euro per kilogram. It will have to be bought from somewhere. And if you do not get interested in actually making it and have a sufficient amount of it, cheaply, you have to buy it from someone who offers it, and it will not be an option to buy it at a price that will make it possible for a given business to survive. So these are the processes that you need to be able to forecast, foresee, in an innovative way, looking at business in a non-standard, out-of-the-box way, because the business is likely to undergo transformation. The same will apply to transport, railway transport, aviation, road transport, heating. All these are areas that will have to undergo transformation at a similar pace, and you can change not only your source of energy, but also it can change the general model for these systems to operate. It may change the location of big plants, the energy sources, and so on. It will all happen parallelly. So certainly it's not an easy task to predict it, but we can say with a high degree of certainty that if you assume that everything will stay the way it is, you will lose. Thank you very much. I think that some of you have started imagining the big fish, as was the case in the Battle of England, shifting their, plans and bets, searching for cheap hydrogen. But that's not the film, that's a reality. I've participated in a project like that myself, where we tried to find a way to locate a zero-emission plant somewhere in Europe, and we found the right spot. So Grzegorz certainly is right in saying that the existing directions of energy and raw material supplies in 9 years are likely to be completely different. And those who can predict the future are the winners. But then you need to, take up from your comfortable armchair and take a look at the reality from a completely different angle. Tomoho, 3 points. What to do in order for us to succeed? Do. I need to refer to what I've heard. We have this enormous tension between two realities. Let's say the reality of the market as it used to be and its structure that was based on big players, huge production plants, gas or power moguls, and of fuel companies. And all these players have sufficient resources to be considering how to shift to the new times unshuttered. And there's also this lobbying power of these companies, so their ideas also find their way to different strategies and so on. Because after all, the idea is to survive. But I believe that the truth is that those big entities cannot survive this transformation. If today we think about the Katowice steel works that needs 3 terawatt-hours of electricity, and then in this green world, the 3 terawatt-hours, that's hard. And the Azoty Group needs 24 gigawatts of RES it would have to install in order to go green. Is that possible? Anybody can answer on their own. There is a division today. It keeps on appearing more and more often. Hopefully it will also appear in the regulatory language, the hard one. So electric and non-electric sources of energy. So RES, electric, the ones that power the power distribution system, and all the RES solutions that drive certain processes, but not part of the system. And I say that the latter will constitute 80% and the former 20%. Say in Poland, 173 terawatt-hours, final energy in economy over 941. So everything you will find on vehicle, engines, gas, azote, and so on. This is to disappear. So almost 800 terawatt-hours are supposed to change into clean energy. What the proportion of nuclear to RES it will be doesn't matter. So we are talking about 45% of RES in the energy mix, but we are to build 800 terawatt-hours of clean, non-electrical sources of energy. Everybody needs to take responsibility for their own power engineering. Everybody needs to bear that in mind, that it is not like that anymore, that I produce my own screws and I buy electricity to be able to do so. I buy it from a big power company. Or we can shrink our economy to a minimum, but this is not the way to go. We shouldn't let it happen. So it is so important to have the sense of agency, of a proactive approach, and simply start getting things done. Nobody will do that for us. Certainly it will not be the government. It will not be the central authorities. It will all happen locally. It will have to be decentralized, dispersed, scattered. And these arrangements depend on us only. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, just a single panelist was applauded. It was Professor. So I've asked the Professor to take this role and wrap up our discussion as we are nearing the end. Professor, I graduated from the Wrocław University of Technology, and our course was geometry because it required the drawings to be really precise, and even small errors resulted in very big deviations from the requirements. Professor Dyba, who chaired the chair of geometry, and he had an adjunct professor, Wapa was his name. He was even worse. And the student said, if Dyba doesn't catch you, then Wapa will do so. So the students were in this very hard position, really, and trap. If we have enterprises that are to do, that need hydrogen, they will have to move to the green options, the green hydrogen. We have those entities that produce fertilizers, and we take pride in being a superpower in agriculture, which is true. Well, so we need to know that the fertilizers at a certain point will have to go green, which means that the European Union is very consistent using either direct methods, directive or indirect methods, taxonomy, or using other methods. There's another front that our entities do not see. The banks will have directive targets of the so-called green assets to others. They will have to make sure that the ratio is preserved. So they will eliminate all non-green investments in order not to deteriorate this ratio. So today's conference, and again, I would like to thank you for your invitation, is something that had two things recurring. One call is there is nothing to wait for, and there is no place you can escape to. So there is only one way to go. We need to treat transformation seriously, and we need to realize that the transformation will not be carried out by the government. It is us who will have to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are closing our panel on this note, and let me repeat the words of two former speakers. The changes is what we start from ourselves. We also call for local authorities to create our local law, local investment possibilities. And I believe that the government will finally understand that certain things will have to be changed by it if we want it all to change. I would like to thank my panel speakers, you ladies and gentlemen, for bearing with us for so long and listening to us. Thank you very, very much.
Jesteśmy największą metropolią w Polsce Północnej. Jesteśmy otwarci na to, co nowe. Jesteśmy świetnym miejscem do życia. Jesteśmy Trójmiastem i dlatego zawsze będziemy dbać bardziej.
Korki na wszystkich drogach dojazdowych do Trójmiasta już dawno przekroczyły akceptowalny poziom. Dlatego samorząd województwa pomorskiego uruchomił nową linię kolejową łączącą metropolię trójmiejską z Kaszubami. Dzięki podróży pociągiem tysiące osób może szybciej i wygodniej dojechać do pracy, szkoły lub na zakupy, a potem wrócić do domu. Nie trać czasu i pieniędzy w korkach. Podróżuj szybko i wygodnie koleją. Do pracy, do szkoły, na zakupy.